Hello, everybody. Welcome to another LinkedIn Live session. And today I have the pleasure and the privilege to welcome David Rock, the CEO and director of the Neuro Leadership Institute. How are you, David?
I'm doing well, all things considering. I'm out in the woods, enjoying some sunshine, and I look forward to spending this hour with you and everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining. I see that you are connecting from all over the world. So the first thing that I want to ask you is please let us know, let everybody else know where you are connecting from. It would be great to know where you are from. If you want to network with other people, that's why we do these things on LinkedIn Live, just to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to, to get to know some other folks from their own regions and whatnot. So Davey and I will be talking today about how to stay focused on in times of coronavirus disruption. So the very first question that I want to ask you, Dave, is the following. Many people are going through a lot of transformation, changes in an incredibly short period of time. I don't think this has ever happened at this scale anywhere in the world. So what do you tell people when it comes to strategies, tactics, thinking that they can sort of put in place in their own life, in their day-to-day, to cope with all that's happening in this very rapid fashion?
Right. There's a lot to say about that. We've been thinking a ton about that. I guess I'll start kind of at the top with sort of the sort of highest construal or sort of most important big picture issues, right? Firstly, hi everyone, and my accent's originally Australian. If you're wondering, I'm based in New York full time. Right now, I'm out of the city. One of the upsides of this crisis is people working more casually, and I would never 2 weeks ago turn up like this, sitting out in the sun. But now I'm kind of out in the woods and sitting by a fire. The fire's not on, but it's nice to be here and connect with folks. Look, I think at the highest level, and I've been trying to make sense of this, and I think I've just got some clarity in the last kind of week coming, as we move through. I think it's important to recognize the kind of stages that we're going through individually and collectively. Firstly, that's one thing. And what's happened is we've been assaulted. We've been assaulted and we're suffering under that. And we've been assaulted by something that you might think is psychological, but actually has the same effect as a physical assault. Like when I say assaulted, I don't necessarily mean by someone else, like falling down the stairs, right? Mm-hmm. I fell down the stairs 5 years ago. I thought I broke my leg and it was incredible, incredibly bad, but I didn't. But like when our body experiences that kind of assault, it goes through some stages. And right now, we are under a level of assault that is actually very similar to physical pain. In the brain, uncertainty is actually treated like pain, and massive uncertainty is as debilitating as like breaking your leg. Like you can't think straight, can't focus. I mean, it has the same effect on cognition as that kind of experience. So I've been sort of thinking about that and trying to get a sense of the sort of stages. And I suddenly had this insight in the last week, like, oh, okay, now I get it. So what's happening is we're all still in shock. So we've just been assaulted, and right now we're in this like shock. So what happens in shock? If you look at the medical literature, what happens in shock? People can't think at all. Your brain's just exploding, extremely volatile, like reactive. You lash out, you're freaking out. Your threat level is just exploded through the roof. And what's interesting though is you're not necessarily feeling any pain yet. So shock does something that sort of inhibits pain, and all it is just like overwhelming abject chaos in your body and your brain. Now, at some point, the shock sort of settles down a bit. For me, when I fell down the stairs, it was like, okay, it was like half an hour in, I could like stop feeling nauseous and I could start like seeing what was going on. And what I noticed was intense pain in my leg. And at some point, people are going to start to move from shock to pain. And unfortunately, this is going to sound a little dark, what I'm going to say. I'm sorry about that. But I'm a believer in the Stockdale paradox. And the Stockdale paradox is, Jim Collins first popularized this, but it was a retired Navy colonel who survived the prisoner of war camps. And basically what he found is people who are overly optimistic just lost the plot when their expectations were dashed. Mm-hmm. people who are pessimistic just, didn't take adaptive actions. And the people there was this sort of paradox of people in the middle who did the right things. And it's this weird paradox of basically believing that in the end, it'll probably work out, and having this hope and faith that like faith, actually, that in the end it's going to work out, but actually being super honest and realistic about just what a complete mess this is right now. And I think that there's a lot of people, America excels in optimism and positive thinking and all this. And I think that's actually getting in the way a bit for a lot of people. I think we have to be super realistic and just mathematical. I think we just need to do math about the pain that's coming, and accept it, but still have that belief in long term. So let me just tell you, and I'm not the expert on this, but just do some math. Just look at the acceleration of things and work out how many people are going to die per day in 2 weeks.
David,
and it's going to be unimaginable. It's going to be unimaginable. So we need to prepare for that. As HR leaders, we need to be seeing around the corner and imagining the pain that people are going to be in 2 to 4 weeks. And that hasn't even started yet. And the crisis management, the chaos that's going to be at that point is going to make us look back on this week longingly.
Yeah.
And then the third stage is rehabilitation. So I'll pause in a sec. But shock, pain, rehabilitation, those are the arcs that we're in. We're still in shock. Soon we're going to move into pain. And I'm going to tell you, right, like you as HR leaders are so important to help your leaders get through the pain stage and then a bit less through the rehabilitation. But that's absolutely critical. So that's my answer to your first question. At a high level, we've sort of got to recognize the cycles, be a little bit ahead of it. And one of the most critical factors is going to be helping people managers still focus amidst pain coming up.
That this is fascinating, and I know it's a little dark, but it's a reality, right? And we see. I don't know if you saw these kids that were in Florida, during the spring break, like totally neglecting science facts, and now they're saying that they were sorry for having gone there because many of them got infected with the coronavirus.
And the rest of them are going to be scarred for life psychically by their friends and everyone else. Yeah,
correct. So there's a group of people who really don't think that what we're going through is as serious as it is. But let me ask you this question. We're going through these stages that you mentioned, and I think we're all hoping and praying that this tragedy ends soon, but it will take some time. So we are all being thrown into this new reality of life and work where everybody's working at home. People don't see their friends. They cannot go out. And let's say that for the next 6 months, this is going to be the same reality. How long will it take for people to say, all right, I went to the peak of transition, crisis, readjustment. It was painful to go through all that. In 1 week, they told me, go and buy a laptop, work from home, bring your family home, don't go out, don't talk to people, don't touch them, blah, blah, blah. How long will it take for us to say, all right, this is the new reality and I'm going to have to deal with it? How long will it take for that moment to come?
Yeah. I mean, it's another 2 to 4 weeks. And some people will be there sooner, but it's going to be at least another couple of weeks. And then people are going to start to have the realization that this is here for a while. I mean, it is here for a while in one form or another. It's going to be here for a while, and there's no way around that. And I think that's where the Stockdale paradox again kind of comes in. Like, we got to keep believing eventually it'll work out, but we actually should stop having hope that it'll be quick. We're actually better off imagining that it's going to be really slow and it's going to be really hard, and actually being realistic about how slow and hard it's going to be. And believe it's going to work out in the end. And so I think over optimism about it being quick and stuff is tricky. So I think it's, some people are there now. I think I got there this week. A bunch of people I know got kind of there now. But I think a lot of people, it's going to take another week, 2 weeks, up to 4 to kind of basically stop being in denial. And also just build some good habits. So there are new rituals to build that, new habits take a lot of cognitive load. They take a lot of cognitive resources. We can't build that many at once, right? So there's a whole raft of sort of new habits people have to kind of lay down in their brains and keep doing until they're automatic. And so there's a lot of new habits to build right now, and that's where people need to focus.
Yeah, you've been researching this topic for so long. How habits get, how we embrace habits and put them in place every day. But I think we're going through a massive social social changes, and it's sort of a global experiment where we're all thrown into this new reality. And do you think people will be embracing sort of new behaviors quicker than they would normally do under normal circumstances? Like, for example, now you have to share your you have to share your house, your home office with your spouse, your children,
Right.
your animals, your pets, whatnot. Do you think people will embrace this reality quicker than before?
There's a great quote from Winston Churchill around the Second World War. He said, the absence of alternatives clears the mind marvelously.
Yeah.
And right now people are going, well, we can keep exploding and keep having trauma and keep, just being a disaster here at home, or we can work out how to, like, it's like being in an away state where everything's a problem, or a toward state where you're taking action. And some people are still in that, like, this is impossible, it's going to end soon, and it just, freaking out. And then at some point they'll move forward. So yeah, I think it's going to happen. I might use that as a leaping off point to sort of talk about, I think, sort of this is something I've been thinking about. I'm writing at the moment, but I think there are three kind of knee-jerk responses in a crisis that can be your undoing. So we have reflex actions. If I hit my knee goes up. It's literally a reflex response. So in a crisis, we have reflexes too. And there are three reflexes in a crisis that can really be our undoing, and we have to, like, override them with good prefrontal activity, good executive function, which vanishes in a crisis, right, by the way. So the three kind of traps and how to offset them. The first one is basically working yourself into the ground, not taking care of yourself, because you have an unbelievable amount to do, right? Everyone has ridiculous amounts to do. Not everyone, but most people have unbelievably larger kind of things to do right now. I know I'm working twice as hard. And so the temptation is just going to be to push and push and push, right, until you drop. And that's a disaster. What you've got to do right now is leave some in the tank.
Yeah.
Right? If you get to empty, you're going to get sick, you're going to get exhausted, you're going to be no use to anyone. Right? So the first temptation is to just, like, push until you drop, be the hero. Be the hero by leaving something in the tank. That's what we're saying. Be the hero by leaving something in the tank. Right? And I can talk a little bit about that, but that's the first one. Let me sort of give you the overview, then we can dig into these a bit more. But the first one is just to, work till you drop. No, what you got to do is take care of yourself. Enough to have some resilience, right? Because you're going to need to draw on reserves at times. That's the first one. The second trap is just, like, doing what leaders have done pretty well for a long time, which is just driving for results. Is you're going to just, particularly when it comes to, like, leaders, right? HR leaders, all leaders, even, like, they're going to have a temptation this time with so much to do and so many challenges to just drive for results. And what you got to do is actually stop and take care of your people. Right? If you don't stop and take care of your people, and we've worked out kind of the critical things for that, your people will just walk away, explode, burn out. Like, this is the time for deep empathy. Right? One of the things we've been saying is get your team on a, make sure you're using video a lot, and take each other through virtual walks. One a meeting of, like, hey, show each other your home and break those walls down of, keeping separate and distant, and, let's kind of create some commonality. And so we need that sort of humanity now. And then people's natural motivation will kick in. So, if you're a leader and you're in a crisis and people think that you don't care, they're going to walk away.
Yeah.
If they think that you care, they'll work twice as hard. So now's the time for good leadership. So the temptation, trap number 2 is just to drive for results. What you got to do is take care of your people, right?
Yeah.
The number 3 temptation is to try and do everything. Just do it faster, right?
Yeah.
And what you got to do is cut back to the essentials.
Yeah.
And just do them well, not try and get them perfect even.
Yeah.
Right? You got to just say, hey, we can't do those 20 things we used to do. Actually, we're going to do these 3, and we can't even get them perfect. We're going to do them okay, and then we're going to pat ourselves on the back for that. So, take care of yourself, look after your people, and deliver the essentials. That's essentially kind of the 3 habits that we're framing up, and we've been building some solutions to kind of scale that and help organizations focus everyone on those 3 things all at once. But that's what I think overall, that we have to do.
No, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting that you say that, because you're describing a world where we put humans first, including ourselves. You're describing a world where we become more agile, innovative in the way we operate. So, and then you're describing a world where people really focus on what matters, on what truly delivers value for their organizations and their people. And this is the kind of world that, people like me have been talking about for years, but it didn't happen
Right.
before because nothing threw us out of the normal track, right? We were very comfortable, the economy was doing well, and now we're thrown into this crisis, and now we
Right.
have to rethink and go back to many of the things that people were saying before, right? Focus on the human, put people first.
Yep.
And but David, let me ask you this question. It's We're going through all this stuff. It's like, you watch the news, and then things going on, and it's getting so crazy. It's so complicated to have bandwidth for anything that is not just the day-to-day operation, because you don't even know if your company will be in business in just 1 week from now.
Week. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, like, I have been talking about the future of work, and now the future of work became the next week of work, right? So the question is, the main topic of this conversation is, how do you stay focused when you're being bombarded every second with thousands and thousands of bytes of information from political leaders, companies, and all that?
Let's
so what do you think?
That. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So let me introduce some language that I've been teaching for a while, and this is something we find super useful to teach to all leaders right now. And if you want to teach it, get in touch with me. I'll work out a way we can help you. There's all sorts of ways, but basically there's this really critical piece of language right now that all leaders, really all employees need to be able to manage their ability to focus. There's a few things that they need, but this is probably the most important one. And it's basically understanding the 3 levels of threat that happen in the brain, right? So just bear with me. It's a little technical, but it's super useful language once you kind of get it. Yeah. So basically there's everything in life is a reward or a threat, right? An opportunity or a danger. And when we're in an opportunity state and we're thinking optimistically and curious and creative, we're resourced mentally, we're creative, we collaborate well, we literally see a lot more options. It's great. When we're in a threat state, we shut down a bit. The problem is threat isn't one thing, it's actually 3 different things. And they have really different impacts on us. And so we've been talking about 3 levels of threat. And it's based on basically how far away you think a real danger is, like an actual danger, right? So the first level of threat is relatively adaptive for getting work done. It's not good for being creative, but you can be focused. In fact, you might even be more focused at level 1 threat, thinking about a deadline and, worrying about a deadline, you might get stuff done. You don't want to be in level 1 threat all the time. If it's chronic, it'll be bad for you. You'll die younger. But level 1 threat's not bad. It's adaptive, and we all kind of go in and out of it at work, and that's fine, right? So level 1 threat is basically you're having a nice day on the savannah, you're out picking berries, and you hear a lion off in the distance, but it's in the distance, right? And you're like, oh, I was having a nice day. I better keep a listen out for anything that sounds like a lion now. Mm. And so your alerting systems fire up, right? And these alerting systems basically tune to the sound of lion or anything relating to lion. So there's sort of everything you know about lions, your brain basically starts listening for those things, right? Yeah. And so your alerting system has fired up. It's not crazy, but it's fired up. Your alarm systems, though, which are essentially panic, heart rate up, run, like your panic systems haven't kicked in. And they're 2 different systems in the brain, alerting and alarming, right? So level 1 threat is like the danger in the distance. So, if you've messed up at work and your boss is normally in another country and you just heard he's in the building, you're at level 1 threat. You're still working okay, but you're a little bit alert, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's like the virus is in China, and it's a bit of an issue. It's not like the first days, but it's like the first weeks if there's a real issue in China, but it's in Wuhan, it's controlled, it's going to be okay, right? That's level 1 threat. Level 2 threat is where the problems really kick in because it's kind of logarithmic. It gets a lot worse. And also different systems kick in, right? So in the savannah, the lion was in the distance, level 1. Now you've heard the lion, and it sounds like it's over the hill somewhere. Like it's in your environment, right? So now it's like the virus is in the US and we don't know, how far it is. So level 2 threat, basically you're now very attuned to anything to do with this issue, right? So again, if it's a lion, anything even slightly orange is bang, you see it, right? So your alerting systems are hyper-vigilant and your alarming systems have now kicked in. And this is basically get ready to run, right? So your alarming systems are cortisol up, heart rate up, immune system down, stop digesting ideas because they take 20% of your brain's resources, which take a lot of your body's resources. So it's stop thinking because it's metabolically expensive. You'll need it to run. Stop digesting, like literally your stomach drops. That's that feeling, right? Stop digesting because that's metabolically expensive. You're going to need it to run. So basically all these things kick in that prepare you to run or fight or whatever. And this stage, your cognitive resources are highly degraded, right? You still have some, right? You can still, schedule meetings, but you can't sit down and write, So you've got kind of, mid-level, thinking you can do, but you can't do any deep thinking, right? Level 2. So, your boss was in the building, level 1, the boss is now on the floor. You're not seeing them walking towards you. They're not near you, but they're on the floor now, right? Remember, you did something wrong, messed up.
Yeah.
Then level 2 is a terrible state to be in for any work. Like if we could press a magic button and never have level 2 threat, we'd all be better off. Unless we actually need to run physically or fight physically, in which case it actually is adaptive, right? Anyway, the real problem, you can see where I'm going, is level 3 threat, right? So level 3 threat, basically your alert systems have gone crazy, and they're kind of even not as important now because your alarm systems have maxed out. So your alarm systems have completely spiked. You've got this huge cortisol spike. You've got this huge adrenaline rush. And this is a lion running at you, right? And so level 3 is like, this is right near me, right? So this is the boss standing at your desk scowling. This is the virus in your neighborhood grocer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is hearing someone cough really badly.
Yeah.
In the grocery store while you're there. Like, oh, bad.
Yeah.
Right? So level 3 threat. Now, level 3 threat, forget about any thinking. All you'll do is be irrational and reflexive and knee-jerk reactions and, terrible things. So basically what's going on is huge numbers of people are at level 2 and level 3, as a result, making terrible decisions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Poor judgment, but also, ironically, messing their immune system too.
Yeah.
Like, it really messes up your immune system to be at level 2, never mind 3. So what we have to do is get really deliberate about calming ourselves in this crisis so that we stay at level 1. Now and then we can't help it. We're going to go to level 2. But that's kind of the big message. And I'll dig more into that, but maybe you respond first. But that's sort of the big message. To take care of yourself, you need to be able to think, first rule, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got to be able to bring ourselves back to level 1 or at the most level 2 threat. That's critical.
No, that's fascinating. And one thing that I want to follow up, on that conversation is all that you're saying requires for us to embrace new habits, right? Like, for example, you're saying, you got to step back a little bit and rethink. You got to calm yourself down, maybe practice some mindfulness and whatnot. So whatever it is, right, it requires for us to do things that we're not used to doing because we're in an environment in which we've never been before. So how do people, like, you're telling them, like,
let me answer that. Yeah.
You're telling them, like, don't go that fast, slow down, but we're used to go fast. So how do you tell them embrace the habit of going slow, especially during times like this?
Look, there's a whole answer to that that's kind of complicated, but I'll give you the pieces of it. So there's a whole lot of books on willpower came out in the last 10 years, kind of explaining willpower. And interestingly, when you study people like David Blaine, who was able to stay underwater forever, and these people who sort of seem to have ridiculous willpower, they'll actually tell you that their willpower is terrible. And what they do is they basically manage the systems so they don't need to rely on willpower. Is that they put in place like systems and processes so that willpower isn't necessary, because willpower turns out to be very limited. Roy Baumeister is one of the scientists on this. And, willpower is like a limited resource. And the challenge is willpower is driven by the brain's braking system, B-R-A-K-I-N-G. And the braking system is literally in the prefrontal cortex, in the left and right ventrolateral prefrontal. And this system is the system that gets massively reduced when your threats go up. So you get to like level 2 threat and you have very little braking left. So this braking system is what's necessary for willpower and for like stopping an automatic action, right? I'm going to stand up. So this willpower is necessary for stopping an automatic action, but you literally don't have it. So what you need to do is kind of plan ahead so you don't need willpower, right? And you've got to set up your systems. Let me give you an example we can all kind of relate to. If you turn on CNN, there's going to be no turning it off for quite a while, and you're just going to spiral down.
Yeah.
Right? So don't turn it on. Like 30 seconds into CNN, you're hooked and you're in there. It's like a cliff. right? Especially the level 2 threat, it's like a cliff. You get close to the edge, you'll fall off, and then you won't be able to come back up for quite a while.
Yeah.
So one of the things is what James Gross, who's the founding father of emotional regulation at Stanford, one of the things is what James Gross said, which is what he called situation selection and situation modification, which is manage your environment so you don't go into these things, right? So I framed up 10 years ago the 5 things that create the biggest threats, right? And what we've been doing is teaching leaders how to basically take kind of these buffers, create these positive buffers based on these 5 threats, right? It's in my book, Your Brain at Work. I think you read it.
Yeah, I did. Fantastic, by the way, everybody. You gotta get that book.
Thank you. I can't believe how much stuff in that book is making a rebound right now. It's like,
yeah,
it's everything in that book is suddenly like really important. But it was 10 years ago I finished it. But the one of the things in the book is basically I organized the big threats that we all experience, particularly the ones that hit level 2 and 3, into kind of categories. And it became the SCARF model, SCARF: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And so what's happening right now is we're taking this massive hit from certainty, right? So much uncertainty your brain's trying to solve. But we also have a hit from autonomy, right? Autonomy is feeling in control. We feel completely out of control. We don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And then the third one, which is a kicker and making the first 2 even worse, is relatedness. So relatedness is like feeling connected with other people. And what we normally do in a crisis is we hang out with our friends and we like plan and we help each other, we support each other. And that physical connection literally calms the nervous system.
Yeah.
Right? When you're in crisis, you connect with other people and get a hug and you feel better. Now, we can't do that in this crisis, so it's kind of making the first 2 even worse, right?
Yeah.
So what we have are SCARF threats, right? Particularly certainty, autonomy, relatedness. Some organizations, big fairness issues as well. Like if you're in a healthcare and half of your people are dealing with the public, with mortal risk, and half are at home, in admin, you got some fairness issues and you better address them, right? So, but certainly certainty, autonomy, and relatedness. So what you've got to do is put in what we call positive SCARF buffers. Right. So what are the buffers you can put in to just make sure you don't fall down into that level 3? So, for example, for certainty, like moderate your media intake. Like 3 times a day is more than adaptive, right? Twice a day is fantastic. Once a day, amazing. If you can do it once a day, amazing. You'll actually get work done the rest of the day. If you're checking the media every hour, multiple times, you're at constant level 2 threat, right? So moderate your now the trouble is this is the brain craving certainty. So you are actually trying to address with a knee-jerk reaction your certainty, lacking with news. But what it does is it actually makes you worse.
Yeah.
So this is so that's I'll finish in a sec. That's the positive certainty buffer, right? For relatedness, it's like every single person on this line, if you do one thing, connect with loved ones on camera every day. If you run out of loved ones, make some new ones. But just like connect with humans every day on camera. Like have more, authentic quality interactions with people than you've ever had online. Every single day to buffer, what we're going through. That's the relatedness one, right? So what we're saying is put these positive buffers in individually or as a team so that you're not starting the day or staying, at level 2 and then little things set you off to 3. Is you've got to put some positive buffers in. You've got to put some positive certainty in by kind of organizing your week and building a schedule and sticking to it, right? That'll create positive certainty. Yeah. List what you can control. That'll create positive autonomy. Connect with others. That'll create. So anyway, that's the summary. So you've got to kind of do that before threats kick in, because once they kick in, your options are limited.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Before continuing our conversation, David, I want to acknowledge, we have almost 500 people watching our session live, and we're going to be sharing the video with you. I know David has referenced some books, some research. You have the video available after this session, so you can go back to it. And I know his team is connected as well, so they can share some information with you. So thank you, everybody, for connecting. And we're going to continue this conversation for a little bit longer. I want to go back to this idea, David, that you mentioned before about going to the essentials. And I know for many people, especially for business owners, small, medium-sized business owners, for them, an essential question is, what the hell do I need to do to be in business next week? I have no idea. But one thing that I have been doing is trying to help people think about the future of work, what the future could look like, and what they should be doing today to adapt to the future, which now has become next week and not necessarily the next 2 or 3 years. So
Yeah.
what's your recommendation to balance focus on the day-to-day, the essentials of the day-to-day today, while also keeping an eye on the fact that one day, hopefully sooner rather than later, but one day we are going to be out of this crisis and the life and the world will go on. So how do we balance that today with long-term thinking when it comes to staying focused, staying at ease and peace with ourselves? I don't know. I'm just trying to find a way to help people think through the two levels, right?
Yeah, no, it's tricky. I mean, the trouble with a crisis is it's hard to think about long-term things, right? You know, when the lion is running at you, you're not thinking about what you'll cook next week. And if it feels like the lion is running at you constantly, even though it's not, if it feels like the lion's over the hill, right? If you're at level 2 threat, it's really hard to think about a house you're going to build next year, if the lion's over the hill. So it shuts down the resources that we need. Threat shuts down the resources that we need for long-term thinking. So you're just not going to be able to think about that stuff in level 2 and 3. You've got to bring yourself back to even neutral. Right? You've got to bring yourself.
How do we do that? How do we go back to level 1 or neutral?
It's ironic, but we sort of got to do the opposite of what we want to do. Right? What we want to do is constantly check in with the news, right? And catastrophize and, be a prepper and all sorts of things, right? I'm not saying don't, get things you need, but that's a sort of, driven response. Actually, and I'm sorry if this is going to sound like an awful thing, but actually the very best way to create like good relatedness and good certainty and good autonomy is to like get with your team and work out what you can control and set some like great, strong, common goals together and work out who's going to do what and meet every day and get that shit done. Excuse my French.
That's all right.
But it turns out that the very best way to get back to level 1 threat is literally to, get back to work. But get back to work on the things that really, really matter right now.
So that means that I know you've talked a lot about setting goals in your work and your books. So does that mean that we have to redefine those goals and be very intentional about making them short term, very, very achievable, so that we don't set ourselves for failure in this context of big mess?
Right now, what we should be doing is looking at our 20 goals we have right now, 10 to 20 goals right now, and working out like the top 6. And then halving them to 3 that actually really matter. We should say, look, these are the 3. Now, when I say goals, I mean goals like by the week.
Yeah.
So we need to be setting goals for the week, what you're going to get done this week, and then working as a team towards them, right? So at our company, we're about 210 people. We have lots of teams, lots of structure and stuff as well. But, we're having daily stand-up meetings. Often they're just 15 minutes. But a lot of project teams are having daily stand-up meetings of just, what you were able to get done, what you need help with. Yeah. Just a quick check-in from each person, right? Obviously virtual, but just that quick check-in of, what's our goal for the week? What have we done today? What do we need help with? And just so work out those common goals. But, setting long-term goals right now is just a bit of a joke to the brain. If you can set a month goal, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Lucky you. I would say set, 1 week goal, maybe 2 week goals, and make progress towards them. That's what's going to bring you back, with your peers, right? Certainty, autonomy, and relatedness. If you can make progress on those things, that's what's going to bring you back.
So I just got a couple of extra questions for you, David. One of them is, a lot of people are living in a lot of a continuous state of anxiety and fear right now. I mean, I just this morning, 3.5 million people claimed this past week filed for unemployment benefits, and that's going to just increase, right? We haven't seen the tip of the iceberg yet. This is just starting. So what's your message to them, like people who are every day in this high level of anxiety and fear?
Look, once the strong threat kicks in, you only have one real option. So threat is sort of like strong threat is like drinking 2 double scotches on an empty stomach. It's like once it's in, and it's in your biology for like hours, literally strong threat. And you just don't think straight for hours. You're a different person, right? So once strong threat kicks in, what you got to do is catch it on the way down. Like as you notice yourself drinking it, or as you're starting to drink it, like, hang on, right? But, you know, once it's fully in you, you don't have a lot of resources, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that you can do when you're really fully in there is humor. And I'm going to explain the neuroscience of why that's actually important in a minute. But, you know, humor is the one thing that can bring you back from the edge when you're really, really deep in a crisis. And I'll explain why. When you're already in that state, your limbic system's really fired up. Your prefrontal has reduced, right? And you have your brain's braking system is terrible. But if you can catch it early, you can use a strategy that is the one strategy that can wrestle strong emotions, and it's called reappraisal. Right? Let me tell you what you're tempted to do first. That is a terrible idea. You'll be tempted to express the emotion, like get mad at the world, get mad at your company, get mad at everything. It's unfair. You know, you'll be tempted to do that. You'll feel better for about 10 seconds, but you'll feel awful for hours, and other people around you will, you know, now be anxious. So expressing emotions, while it might feel like the right thing to do, is usually a bad idea when there's strong kind of threat emotions. So don't do that. Suppressing emotions turns out to actually make them the same or worse. So trying not to feel how upset you are actually will leave you as upset or more upset. Yeah. And it has an unintended effect of secondhand smoke on other people. Like if you're suppressing a strong emotion, you're really upset about losing your job, and you're trying not to feel it, your partner's blood pressure will go up. And that's not a metaphor. It's been studied. Like people around you, their blood pressure actually goes up when, you know, people try to suppress emotions. So what we don't want to do is, like, you know, let it out or hold it back. What we've got to do is reappraise. And it's difficult. Reappraise is difficult in a crisis, but it's the only tool that works, right? It's the only tool. And a glib explanation of reappraisal is finding the silver lining, but it's more than that. But that is kind of what it is. It's like taking the interpretation that you've made and changing it. You know, like, I'm going to be laid off now. I'm definitely anxious about, you know, if someone saying to themselves, I'm going to be really anxious about money. I'm going to, you know, I don't know what's going on. So what is the positive I can find from this? Oh, this is actually a time I can, like, you know, really get my home exactly the way I want, work on it. This is a time I can have quality time with my family. This is a time I can actually get fit, right? This is a time I can manage my sleep and get the amount of sleep I need and build my immune system. So these are examples. You've got to choose your own. You have to kind of, you have to change the interpretation that you've made into something that's actually a positive. And you can't be sort of told what that is. You've got to come to it. So in a strong crisis, finding the positive interpretation is critical.
No, that's fantastic. I want to switch gears a little bit for the last two questions. One of them is I think it's critical for a lot of people.
How long do we have, by the way? I'm completely oblivious to the time.
We have like 5 more minutes.
Okay, good. So I want to make some closing comments. Yeah.
Thank you. We have just a couple of last questions. One of them is the following. There are a lot of solopreneurs. There are a lot of people who live alone, and, you know, they don't go out anymore. They don't go to the bar. They don't go to drink or anything. So it can feel really lonely. So what's your message to those people that are either solopreneurs or live by themselves, or are, like, by some reason or for some reason they are isolated because of all that's going on? What's your message to those?
Everyone.
Yeah, like most everyone. Yeah.
Get on camera every day, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Get on camera. Have, like, long conversations. I'm isolated from my kids now. It's breaking my heart. They're in LA. I'm in upstate New York. It's really hard. I'm spending an hour every day with one of them. Often we're just hanging out. They're, like, doing other stuff, but we've got FaceTime on, and we're just commenting, and we're just hanging out, right? So, you know, have the hangout. Have virtual happy hour. This is happening in companies too. Like, you just hang out, have a drink, chat, have the virtual happy hour, have the virtual coffee break for half an hour. But, you know, as individuals, we've got to feed that craving for relatedness. Don't go it alone. Connect a lot on camera. Now, if you don't have camera, phone's very intimate. Phone's like brain to brain, right? It's right in there in the ear. Like, that's also going to be really intimate. So, you know, reach out to people that matter to you and connect with them. Awesome. It's super important right now to balance out our crazy nervous system.
Also, my last question to you, David, is this: can you tell us just one or two things, like micro actions that people, I know that I know that you don't like to oversimplify things, but just very digestible 2 micro actions that people can start doing right at this very second after this they hang up, or they sign off from this live session. Just a couple of micro
go
sessions.
and look at your schedule and plug in the right things. So look at your schedule and plug in the positive things. Plug in, like, literally schedule time in for positive interactions with people in the evenings. Plug in exercise, plug in more sleep. Right now, you need more exercise than you've ever needed to kind of push out the cortisol and stuff. So you can do it at home. You can exercise in 6 feet of floor, right? Plug in exercise, ideally daily. Plug in connecting with people, ideally daily. And these are some upsides. You can actually have a lot more exercise given you're not traveling and other stuff. So, look at your schedule and work out how to plug those positive scarf buffers in, right? Turn down your media intake a lot. Yeah. It's a big one. It's counterintuitive, but you think you're feeling better, but you're absolutely not. Those are the big one. I think those are the big ones. And just like, watch your threat level. Like, watch your threat level and just be kind to yourself. This is the toughest thing most of us have ever had to deal with, except if you've lived through major war. This is a wartime footing. It's going to feel a lot more like that in a month as the pain kicks in. Find out how to help people. If you can help people virtually without putting anyone at risk, you'll also feel a whole lot better. Find out ways to help each other, because that's coming. We're going to all need each other a lot.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. As David said, one of the things that we're doing at Hacking HR is making sure that we're providing all the opportunities for people to come together, either to learn or just to talk and vent and find, some other compassionate voice to talk to. So join us in the things that we're doing in Hacking HR. David, thank you so much for joining us today from that beautiful blue sky in upstate New York.
It's great to be here. Please check, if you want to stay connected personally, David Rock 101 on Twitter. David Rock 101 on Twitter. It's a good place to connect personally. Or neuroleadership.com. You can see what we're doing. We're helping organizations to actually focus with some of these ideas. But connect with me there on Twitter. Say hi. Connect at neuroleadership.com. And wish you the best. And I'll close with one thing. This is the one time in recorded history for a long time that pretty much the whole human race is feeling the same thing. Pretty much everyone you've ever met is having the same experience as you right now. And it's quite something, and it's quite moving. And just, try to remember we're all in this together, and, take care of each other.
Thank you, David. Fantastic last thought. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.